And of course, I'll be channeling the community engagement between institutions of higher learning and, of course, how to marry the two. So I've had the privilege of hosting students from different, institutions of higher learning for their well-integrated learning as a small business owner, or rather a business owner. I don't like to use the word small. And so, of course, that's where I sort of transitioned my interest from entrepreneurship to education, because then I had a better understanding of, the processes it takes for the learner to be placed, the entire process in terms of their will and completion. Of course, I've had challenges, and I feel like one of the key things or tools that institutions of higher learnings need to start practicing on or implementing is introducing learner profiles. So in business, you have customer segmentation, which equips you on, your type of customer. And so in institutions of higher learning, it should be introduced to have learner profiles. I'll give you two examples. You have a Busiswa who stays in Khayelitsha, and you have a Melissa who stays in Tableview, right? They are both in the same institution, and they are pursuing the same qualification. Busiswa needs to travel from Khayelitsha to the institution. Melissa gets dropped off by their parents, right? Of course, this is an assumption, but also this is learner segmentation. And so when the session is done, Busiswa needs to travel back to Khayelitsha using public transport. The parent of Melissa gets them from school. Melissa gets home, probably naps, gets a snack. Busiswa has to get home and cook. They have to do some chores, and only maybe towards the evening they get to do their projects. And so you have a Melissa that's fresh in the morning, ready to take on the lesson, and then the cycle continues. Maybe an additional thing would be challenges like connectivity, right? Maybe Busiswa doesn't have like an active or fast connection, so maybe even online learning will not be an option. So once we understand those dynamics, I forgot the presentation. So once we understand those dynamics, I think as lecturers, we are in a good position to make informed decisions, and also will be informed in terms of skills and resources analysis. Because then if we send the learners out in being part of community engagements, we already kind of know where to place who to place, I'm trying to say. But then also, one of the things that I've experienced as a hosting an organization in terms of placement is that majority of the students are not tech savvy at all. So it's quite shocking, because now you ask yourself, what is the content that is covered in the institution of higher learning? And it also baffles me that organizations are not as accepting of the students, because this is a free service majority of the time. So then there's a discourse between all stakeholders involved. Yeah? And so I'm maybe just going to go around the room to find out, according to you, who are the stakeholders in this case. Anyone? I'll go first. The institution of higher learning is a stakeholder. Anyone who would like to jump in?
Is this in relation to the learners that you are trying to get into the workplace?
Yes. Okay. So everyone else that's involved in that entire process. You want to give it a shot?
Their families are
yes, definitely. Themselves. I love that. So I made a list. So I'm going to break down the list. It's the parents, it's corporate, it's NPOs and NGOs, it's small businesses, it's the institution, it's the policymakers, and in addition, it's AI. because you can't remove AI from the theory, or rather the practical in this instance. So yes, you have this policy that is expectant of the learner to go into the corporate space, but then the learner is not as equipped. And so whose problem is that? So if you call me as a corporate and say, Busi, I've got 25 learners, can you do the honors? And I'm like, okay, sure. But then these learners get to my corporate and they can't really help me to navigate. And so the conversation we should be having is, yes, there's the syllabus, right? But how effective is the syllabus? And also we cannot just depend on that will process, because the will is like 6 months. So we need to then incorporate an unofficial will integrated learning into the syllabus holistically, so that when you take the learners out into society, they are competent. So that's the conversation. And then how do you ensure the relationships between everyone that's involved, which is a stakeholder? So I'm going to make an example. If let's say I'm a parent, right? I'm a parent, and I have a learner at the institution, right? Depending on my profile, it is then partly my responsibility to come to the institution and say, guys, besides me being a parent to Ulisha, I actually have these networks. So when the time comes, if you guys need assistance in placement, you can approach me, or I can help you, to place the learners. And then it goes beyond that. It goes to a community. There's churches, there's SAPs, for example. There are real life situations where the learners can be encouraged, to be active citizens of society, because it doesn't end with the will. So there's life after will, and there's life after having or getting your qualification. And there's a gap somewhere. Because then that's why one of the reasons why we have an increased number of unemployed graduates is because there's clearly a discourse somewhere. And so spaces like these enable us to have these conversations to say, okay, there's something that's not working out here. You have over 1 million students who are in debt. Majority of them are doing well academically, but they're not getting jobs, right? Are we encouraging a system where from high school you go to institution of higher learning and then you go look for a job? Or are we saying, okay, we understand that sometimes it might not work out as planned, so what's the solution? So I liked one of the presentations. Someone was covering, riling entrepreneurship in high school level. I smiled, I was happy, because that's what it's all about. Giving the learners an option to say, look, you might not even pursue your academia, but these are the options. Yeah? And then after that, after you've built your relationships, I feel what's missing is evaluation. If we don't know where the problem is, we are not able to come up with solutions. So if you are saying to me, okay, based on the demographics, we have a data issue, we have a Wi-Fi connectivity issue, then you are able to do your roadmap in terms of what you need. If you are saying to me, it's a matter of language, then you are able to rally, the solutions around that. If you're saying to me it's a finance issue, so I feel like, yes, we have these structures in place, but of course, because we have a major discourse, there are these small things that are missing from the marriage, right? Because you have your parents, you have the policymakers, you have the government, and everyone else involved. And I liked how you said, Emily, themselves. Because I think we don't marry them or we don't consider them that because it's their future, they need to be active in their approach and of course their objectives, which is to complete their qualifications and be active members of society. And I think the important thing for me when we walk out of this room is knowing what our role is individually. Because then if we carry our individual roles when it comes to these spaces, we are able to sort of put our responsibilities or our commitment into a hat and we say, okay guys, these are the resources that we already have. Because we are resources here in the room. And I think let me open up for questions, comments. It is a conversation after. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. So I would like to know, since you are picking up all these the small gaps in between your will and employment, where do you think the problem is? Do you think the problem is in the entry level of support when it comes to support services, or is it the pre-entry, the entry, or the exit support? Because I feel like there's a gap between the entry and the exit support. There's work to be done there with regards to work-integrated learning.
Thank you for that beautiful question. So for me, I think it's between the middle and the exit. Yeah? Because I was really shocked that you have a student in their third year and they cannot use Zoom. So for me, it's definitely the middle and the exit.
And with that, right, now that you found, because, okay, it's in the middle of the entry and the exit. Do you think maybe the COVID-19 had an impact with them? Like now you are actually saying that you are shocked that you are seeing today that a third year level student cannot utilize Zoom.
Maybe then, using that specific scenario, it will also be an access thing. So then it has nothing to do with the institution in this case. Because remember the student profiles I did prior, maybe Busiswa was never really introduced to a Zoom. Whereas a Samantha would, maybe Samantha's mom would say, hey, can you maybe help me out with this thing? And so that's how they get to learn. You know what I'm saying? So when you send the learner to the institution, even maybe it's not the institution's responsibility, especially at entry level. But it's definitely the responsibility of the institution between and exit. Yeah? Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Any more questions, comments, experiences that we've had in our own profiles, or?
I think mine is a comment, rather, looking at the ecosystem that you spoke about. And I know a lot of people shunned the former Chief Justice for saying that a lot of these things, or a lot of the systematic things, actually start in the home. If you think back to the apartheid era, education, the home, held the position of education. And teachers were the external stakeholder helping the home. Right, so even your uneducated grandmother knew what education was, and she valued it, and she taught that to you as a value system, which you then took forward. So I think there's a lot of expectation on lecturers and people in educational institutions to solve so many things that we should actually be bringing back into the home and giving agency where it belongs, and it's in the home. People do have solutions, but people have sat back because we've said, hey, the varsity must solve it, or someone else must do it. We're not going to do it in this home. So for me, that's where the disconnect starts. It's where the agency has been lost, and that's the home.
Thank you for that, which is why I was very happy when one of the presentations covered high schools, right? And again, we cannot deny the differences between the profiles. Because even at primary level, I already had an email address, for example, because it's access. Someone made me aware, right? It also doesn't confirm that, I'm not curious. It just basically means that I just didn't have access. Yeah. So then we need to come up with a solution as well with that. So answering you in terms of the three dimensionals, which is entry, middle, and exit. Yeah. So then maybe to understand how it now becomes a responsibility of the institution, even at entry level.
Mm-hmm.
They can put in things like a survey, demographics, what do you say, what applications can you use, preparing them for their 3-year journey.
Just in terms of experience with interns at our institution, I think what has worked for us is having a relationship with, so CPUT sends interns to us. But what they do is they actually ask the interns to create a CV. So we get CVs, we can actually look at them and say there's 10 or whatever, and we get to choose whatever we want. When they come in, they go through an orientation process. I'm invited to an advisory panel from CPUT side. When they do, they will, and the community, they have like a once a year where they get all the stakeholders in terms of the organizations that the students would go to come and give feedback on
evaluation.
Yes, and some of the people that come would say, like you were saying, we got these students, but technologically there seems to be a miss. So what they then do is they go back to that particular class, maybe information literacy or something, and re-look. I'm not saying they revamp their whole thing, but we are able to give them, as an advisory board, and our experience with having the students, areas that they might want to help the students so that when they do go out for a job, they are better equipped. So I think it's worked for us, but you mentioned something about relationship and disconnect, and I think that disconnect sometimes is between us as an institution, because we also have students going out doing field work, our students going into other organizations, or doing a practicums, and also it depends on which field it's in, because it could be psychology or it could be administration, or business. It all looks different. And so, depending on where they're going, I think if there isn't a relationship between the NGO or the organization and the institution, then that students' will experience would not be as it should be, because there has to be that connection from the sending organization and the organization is going to allow this opportunity for this person to grow and develop.
Thank you for that. I think for me, another important thing is, installing some level of awareness at high school level at least, that you can actually go to the church and ask to volunteer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when you come to, here, you are not stuck. You are sort of moving with ease. Right? And so maybe then in this case, what I would recommend is for institution of higher learning not to start at third year to implement the wheel, right? To sort of gradually grow within the student, as opposed to just, activating this solution in third year. Because already, for me, it's like too late,
I was actually going to ask, since the students or the learner is also regarded as a stakeholder, do you think their perceptions, their attitudes towards the will also play a role when it comes to this? Because you find that students at times, they will feel like, this is not my work, I'm just doing this to fulfill my qualification and that I get this qualification and leave. Whereas that's the beginning of your employment journey, basically. And also, I think, just to add on to your evaluation and reporting, I think you see this pre-entry, the entry and the exit. It's part of the PSET. It's under the PSET policy. I think it was actually going to be better, like how you said, we should implement it in a primary intervention from preschool, from kindergarten, from elementary school till high school till varsity, where there's an entry, where there's a way of doing things, where the pre-entry. Yes, for instance, let's say in matric, you have exit support where you, after matric, you don't have to go to let's say to university, you know. Other people, they are born with entrepreneurship or they need skills from a very young age. That can be cultivated, because now you find that because of societal expectations, people go to universities or higher learning of institutions where it's not what they want, but because we are doing it for our parents, you know. So I think this evaluation that's used under the PSET, it would actually make sense if it would be implemented from primary school level, from kindergarten, and actually on the exit support, like how you said, it is each and every stakeholder's responsibility to keep track of the student. Hi, you are doing internship with us. Hi, we had you. You are doing a certain qualification with our university. Where are you now? How has it been? Are you able to find employment? Did you find any, you know, just follow up, keep on evaluating and monitoring. And that's when we'll be able to pick up where the problem is within the gap.
And you can come up with areas of improvement that you've mentioned. Thank you for that. The lady mentioned, of course, with the student profiles, right? We have a perception, we all have a perception, and we have an expectation. So if I'm a lecturer of, you know, second year, my expectation is that you should have an email address, so that when I introduce a session where you're required to send an email, we're not even talking about creating emails, because my perception is that you are 18 and, you know. But then again, we cannot deny access. Maybe at home, no one has an email address, because they don't see the purpose of you know, having an email address, and of course they don't use it. So then again, whose responsibility is it? Is it the learner? You know, the learner must be curious, the teacher, you know. So I think for me, once we understand these dynamics and these challenges, we are able to come up with solutions. Even if on a, you know, snail pace, it's still a solution. I had the pleasure of chatting to one of your interns. She's from CPUT, I think. And of course, we had a brief conversation. And one of the other challenges is that sometimes the institutions do not place the learners, like they don't make an attempt. They just give them all those forms, and the students must see for themselves. How? You know? So then it's an issue, because maybe the learners have never really sent a formal email. You know? So it's a problem. So can I maybe have a few people pledging and saying, okay, in my professional profile or role, this is what I commit to. Anyone?
Can I say something? I'm so glad you said that, because I think we're sinking in somewhere.
It's my brand.
Oh, okay. Because just before you said that, I was thinking it, and I didn't want to say it, that, you know, we are on this earth for more than just ourselves. And we influence people all the time. And whenever we come across somebody that we can see is unsure of how to do something or how to move forward, whether they're in our class or whether it doesn't matter who they are, there should be something within us that is willing to help. Whether it's an email address, whether it's taxi fare to get to an interview. You know, we pick up when people speak to us about where the lack is, and sometimes we are in a position where we can actually help to empower them to step up onto the platform that's going to make them succeed and make them be able to live a sustainable life and take care of their families. So I do pledge that whenever I can, I will.
Thank you.
I love my job.
And I'll do this now. Another thing that we are swimming in as society is individualism. It's not my daughter, it's not my son. You know, they must sort themselves out. Can't we have a role to play? And the learners have not necessarily been actively introduced to their role because they have a role, right? And I think you guys have a much bigger responsibility because you owe it to the parents, you know? You owe it. No, I'm not. Of course, I'm not talking about entry maybe in this case, but we all need someone, guys. Now, I had teachers in primary level who would give me appraisals and say, you would make a great writer, right? And I had the same in high school, and now I'm a writer. I contribute for publications because I had one person who continually said, this is not how you pronounce it, this is not how you spell it. And so if we can all become like that. Yes, darling.
Hi everyone. Okay, you just spoke about my field of work. I'm a librarian, and I'm thinking that since I'm working in an academic library, I believe that my other colleagues that works in public libraries, that's where they enter, where they can teach. It's a pre-entry level course. They teach computers, there are computer lessons, they teach how to send emails, and all other things, Microsoft, Excel. So I think that is a role of public libraries. That's where they must be used by communities. The only problem is that library does not come to your house. You need to go there. So there's the
I like that.
Yes. I don't believe it is utilized enough. But there is a lot that you can do from a public library. Yes.
From public institutions in basic.
Yes.
In closing, Emily, another challenge with that is that people don't see the value. Like, they don't see the need.
They don't.
Until
they
they're
only think libraries for books.
Until they're in the third year.
Yes.
Yeah? Are we wrapping up?
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.